Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Troy Atkin. Troy is a trainee solicitor at Biscoe Solicitors and national level powerlifter, taking third place at the British Bench Competition 2022 and 2021. Troy documents his fitness and mental health journey on his popular Instagram page, _weightlifting_lawyer. So a very, very warm welcome, Troy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind welcome, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Troy. And before we dive into everything that you're getting up to within the legal community, we do have our customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, how real would you rate the reality hit TV series Suits?
What a question. Probably 6.5.
6.5. Okay. And do you want to sort of justify your 6.5, or should we move swiftly on?
I think in the sense that sometimes when Harvey kind of strolls into opposition firms and demands to settle there and then, that's probably, whilst we all would like to have that scenario happen, it's not that realistic. But in terms of day-to-day office life, there are some kind of similar dynamics that I can certainly relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And you're looking as slick as Harvey Specter today, it has to be said, Troy. So it's really great to see. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us a bit about your background and why you decided to pursue a career in the law.
Yeah, so I entered the legal profession a little later than maybe one would expect. I was around 24, 25 when I kind of got back into university and I started my law degree. Previous to that, I had an experience in hospitality, retail, mainly client-facing, customer-based roles. But I'd always, from a very, very young age, I've always wanted to qualify as a barrister. I think from a young age, I always liked seeing, the people in wigs and silks stand up and advocate, and almost, it sounds a little bit cliche, but be that voice of justice for people. I've always felt strongly to kind of put myself in the way of others when they weren't able to do so themselves. But it was only until a little later into my 20s where I kind of took the steps to pursue that law degree and continue that path.
Yeah, and what a path you have been on, it has to be said, Troy. So you are currently a trainee solicitor at Biscoe Solicitors, which is awesome, and you're currently in your second seat in the corporate department, I believe.
Correct.
What have been your experiences to date?
Well, I think I'm almost at probably the most optimal training facility for a solicitor to be at, because we're a regional firm, managed by an absolutely wonderful MD, Alison Lee. But the key element for me is, I'm open about this, I'm quite difficult to manage in terms of if I'm micromanaged, you're probably not going to get the best out of me. Now, that's not to say that I'm not a team player or anything like that, but I believe that if you just kind of let me do what I'm able to do, I can provide my value to the team that way. And I'm in an environment where the supervision is unbelievable here. It's very supportive. The guidance that you get is fantastic. But in the same breath, you're trusted. You're not micromanaged as you may be in other firms. And I've worked at a number of other firms where maybe that may be the case. So to come to this firm and almost, in my opinion, it's the perfect place to train. I have quite a large client list. I've got quite a large matter list already, which I've accumulated, which has allowed me to, not only bring a fee to the team, but also accumulate testimonials, return clients, and build that rapport up with clients myself. So I think it's been a wonderful experience so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of my training contract.
Yeah, and I love that you picked up on there the sort of the people element and the rapport, because I always say rapport wins the war in any industry. The better that you can build those human relationships, those connections, the better you're going to have a long lasting, fruitful working relationship. So let's stick with your training contract, because when you started, you were in commercial property, I believe. So what did you enjoy most about that seat?
Well, I think, it's ironic that my least favourite subjects in law school were anything property or land related, and I always thought I wanted to be a company lawyer. Commercial property, well, first and foremost, I really enjoy, again, it's a little bit of a cliche answer, but I enjoy learning new things. I enjoy facing new challenges, and I enjoy trying to overcome obstacles that I might never not had the opportunity to overcome before. So that afforded me the environment to do that. I think from a practical perspective, it also kind of gave me the confidence that maybe if I was not academically as brilliant at something as maybe others were, well, in practice, it's a completely different ball game. So that was the first experience of it's different in practice to academia to me, and it really kind of filled me with confidence, knowing that, okay, well, just because I might not have been able to do an exam to a very high standard on it, but I can actually practice to a very high standard. Because you're right, Rob, it's completely personal. It's making those personal connections, albeit business, corporate, commercial connections in property, but it's making that rapport and building those relationships where you're dealing with a lot of money in these transactions, and it's all about trust. And if you build that rapport up, then that, almost the transactional part of commercial property becomes secondary. It's extremely important that you understand the transactional part, of course, because you need to know the law, and that's fine. But to kind of have that law as secondary and almost second nature to you, and putting the client first and their needs, their goals, what are they trying to achieve? That I found that really, really interesting and a good challenge.
Yeah, and it's so true, because I think knowing the law is a given. You can go, you'd hope for anyone who's qualifying or qualified, that's a given. It's like, what gives you that edge?
Yes.
And I think that is definitely something, for people listening in, the more you focus on the end delivery person of the client, and they're a human, they're a person, they have needs, actually have that rapport, the more you will get out of those relationships, that's for sure. So I'd like to talk a little bit about mindset. I know it's something you talk a lot about, Troy, as well. What does it mean to have an elite mindset within the law?
Within the law, it's quite simple, and I think it's when everyone else stops and you continue. That is an elite mindset. It's quite simple as that, and I think you can have that mindset to everything. And I try not to just apply it specifically to certain things, because I just try and have it as a blanket approach to everything I face. So, for example, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but my lifting and maybe my mental health struggles, I approach everything the same way. It's in a logical fashion. So how do I approach an elite mindset within the law? Well, I keep things extremely simple. The main thing is to not forget what are the client's aims, what are their goals, and how am I going to achieve that? And to incorporate an elite mindset into that, it's quite simple for me, and it's try not to get too overwhelmed. Try to understand that, at times you may feel out of your depth. There is the phrase of imposter syndrome that flies around every now and then. But I think it's important to understand that, we're in this position because somehow along the way we were good enough to get here. It's not, you don't get to this stage just by luck. You may get to law school and on a whim or whatever, but there are lots of hurdles that we've had to overcome to get to this stage, and it's so important to kind of take a step out of that entitled lawyer bubble that we are often found trapped in, and just kind of really just see how far we've come. And I think that's where an elite mindset is born from. It's understanding the struggles that you had to get here, but also the realization that you are here, and let's just put everything negative to one side, and then let's just move forward with purpose, move forward with that belief, and move forward to win for your client.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you describe that in terms of, when everyone stops, you keep going. Because it's so true. And I love what you talk with such clarity as well, about keeping it simple. I always say in anything in life and anything in business, use the KISS approach, keep it stupid simple. I think it's really, really straightforward, because ultimately, if you confuse them, you'll lose them. And I think that's very, very true in business. People want clarity, they want simplicity, they want to be able to understand, they want to digest. And ultimately, that's what builds the trust. So I love that you're talking about that. And you did touch on your powerlifting there, Troy. So interestingly, you are a national level powerlifter. And I believe you took 3rd place at the British competition 2022 and 2021 competitions. So congratulations on that amazing achievement. I know there's a lot that goes into that. What inspired you to start training?
I think initially watching one of my best friends powerlift and being in that environment, watching him compete, and I just quite simply, again, just wanted to be a part of it. And, you know, one of my traits is believing that I can do anything that anyone else can. So, you know, as in powerlifting, I thought I'd love to give this a go. And I think I started powerlifting the same time in which my mental health journey kind of really kick-started. And it afforded me initially a routine. You know, I would train every day at this time, and I would have a set routine. I would be coached, and I would, you know, train a specific thing each week. And I have always said I am probably the most competitive person you will ever meet in your life, to the point where if you say, oh, I know someone else, I will try and prove that I'm more competitive than them. So by that nature, I fell into competing, and I absolutely loved it. And I think not only the strength gains that I've you know, obtained from lifting, but the mental fortitude and strength that I've got has been unbelievable. In my mind, if I can wake up at 7 a.m, sometimes 5 a.m, 6 a.m, sometimes even 3 a.m, if I can wake up at those times and train for 3 hours on my own, sometimes failing, sometimes, you know, not hitting the reps, maybe sometimes being a little too overweight for what my competition needs and things like that. If I can overcome that, then I can do absolutely anything. So that's part of the reason why I love lifting. It's not just the strength and the, you know, the composition and the changes in your body that you see, but it's in here, it's in your mind, what it does to you, because it makes you feel like you can overcome anything.
Oh, I love that, Troy. Yeah, and it's discipline, isn't it? And it's habits, and those habits become sort of, you know, consistent. And like you say, the 3 a.m s, the 5 a.m s, the 6 a.m s, the 7 a.m s, it all becomes possible because you're creating those sort of positive habits. And that leads nicely on to your documenting of your weightlifting journey, because you do that via your Instagram page, which is hugely successful. So it's _weightlifting_lawyer for folks. Definitely go and check it out. You can't miss it. It already has over 17,000 followers. So can you tell us a bit more about your online platform and what sort of content you produce?
Yeah, so my platform started as accountability for what I was doing. I wanted a space where I could just post my lifts. I love watching anyone of any level lift, and it brings me great joy to see anyone of any level lift, because I know the happiness it gives me, and seeing it, you know, potentially that happen to someone else is an unbelievable feeling. So from the get-go, I started my account just to document that. I think, you know, I built up quite a quick following anyway because of lifting, and then I saw a good platform opportunity to just be open about what I've been through. And why maybe I started trying to have that routine of lifting and what have you. And that's when the mental health element came into it. So I decided that if I was going to do this, I was going to be different to maybe other social media sites similar to mine, in that I would try and provide as an authentic approach as I could. I would try and provide I call it a no BS approach to life. That's my way of kind of marketing what I am. There's no kind of frills. There's no, I give you all the best of me, but I also give you the worst as well. Not because for any reason other than I want people to know that even people that are deemed to be successful, or people that look like they lift heavy weights, well, guess what? We have our dark moments as well, and it's okay to go through them. And I am unapologetic in showing people that I go through my vulnerabilities. And if you are doing that as well, maybe people can take some semblance of hope, as I once did when I looked at accounts similar to mine, and say, you know what? this is not the end. I can keep going. I can find some strength from what he's saying or what he's doing, and I can take that, put the little best bits of it into what I'm doing, and move forward, and hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah, and I love how you've articulated that, because you're being your true authentic self. You're showing the 360 you, and I think that's important online, because you don't just want to necessarily show the highlights. You want to show that vulnerability, and let people in, and let people know that maybe you have some tough days, because we all do. We're all human at the end of the day, myself included. And I stand by, if it doesn't break you, it'll make you. And I think it's so true. And you're a very strong advocate for trying to creating a positive mindset. Time for a quick break from the show. Are you a legal aid practitioner in England and Wales, specializing in civil or criminal legal aid matters? If you are, this message is for you. As a legal aid solicitor, you don't have time to waste on legal aid case management software that doesn't work to your needs. That's why Clio has developed a quicker, more accurate and affordable solution for legal aid solicitors in England and Wales. It could save you hours in your month, particularly when it comes to end-of-month invoicing and claims to the legal aid agency. To see how it all works, visit clio.com/UK/legal aid. That's Clio, CLIO.com/UK/legal aid. Now back to the show. And on the Instagram page, you are a strong advocate for mental health. I know we've touched on this, but I want to dive a bit deeper. Why is mental health so important to you?
Mental health is so important to me because, I think like many of us, I've had a first-hand account of how bad it can be. I think the phrase rock bottom has thrown around a few times. I personally do not believe rock bottom exists, because I believe it's a concept that we've made up to convince ourselves that we're about to finish something, and that something might be going through mental health issues. The point that I say that is because I'm a big advocate of sharing everything I've gone through to show that the only way out of it, in my opinion, is to be accountable to yourself and to really kind of try and take a look at where you're at and understanding, whether that's through whatever mediums you might take, why you're in that position and what the best way forward is. It took me a very long time to learn that. Part of me as well, something that I'm not private about, but it's something I don't really kind of scream about, but I became sober nearly 3.5 years ago. So that was part of my mental health journey as well. It was a culmination of, going through a dark stage in my life. And I decided that the only way forward for me would be to start taking positive steps. Those positive steps for me were to giving up going out drinking with my friends or drinking whenever, and also to give up other things like cigarettes and try and just lead a healthier lifestyle. So that's part of what I also show on my Instagram. And some people it's a taboo. You don't drink. You don't drink in law as well. In a profession that's renowned for its frivolity, shall we say. I try and lead as clean a lifestyle as I can. And that's why it's so important to me to have the mindset that I'm trying to create, because I am unmoved in my principles of where I'm at as a person. There is not one person in this world that can, make me change my path and where I'm going. And I want to show people that, okay, well, you know what? I had some issues, but that's fine. It doesn't mean I'm not a success. It doesn't mean I'm not valuable as a person. It doesn't mean I'm not valuable as an asset to a business, importantly. And most importantly, it doesn't mean I can't do the best job for my clients. If anything, I am crisp, I am clean, I'm ready to go 24/7. I'm of clear mind all the time, and I'm in a fantastic mental space. Now, that's not to say I don't go through some obstacles, because we all do. But the point being is, when I go through those obstacles, I'm transparent with them, or as transparent as I can be.
Yeah, and congratulations on the 3.5 years and making that choice for you. That's the right decision for you. And then you talked also about sort of accountability and holding yourself accountable. And I always say, I think I've said this a few times on the show, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. You have to take that self accountability. And I love how you've done that for yourself. And then you're also trying to share and provide resources through your Instagram handle and everything you do through your talks and so forth to encourage more people to maybe take that step to basically put themselves in a happier place. So really, really well done on everything you're doing. And you talked about the legal industry more broadly there. And so why do you think mental health is becoming something more prevalent in the legal industry?
Quite simply because it's treated like a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
That is the simple answer. And whilst it's my opinion, I truly believe that is the reason why. I think the use of social media and how accessible things are now, firms, especially bigger firms, have to be shown to be part of this inclusive, diverse, mental health, progressive nature. And I think because of that, because everything's being rushed, no care's been taken. So therefore things by virtue of that become a tick box exercise. There are no real kind of research into the scientific reasons why employees might feel a certain way, or there's no kind of, asking employees. I think that's the most important thing, asking the employees, why are you feeling a certain way? But I think it all comes down to the fact that the legal industry, it's a money maker. It's a conveyor belt of cash. And if you don't make money, you're out. It's simple as that. It doesn't matter what business you're in or what law firm you're in. If you're not a valuable asset, I strongly believe this. It doesn't matter how inclusive or diverse or, commercially mentally aware you are. You won't have a place in that business. And do I think it's ever going to change? I don't think it will, because as long as the money's being made at the top of the game, then it's never going to drip down to the bottom. And I think at this moment in time, you've got some absolutely fantastic advocates of inclusivity, mental health, and all those other things that are really important to think about. And they're almost, trying to push their way up. And then you have the middle of the legal industry where they're happy to just do the long hours quietly, suffer in silence. You've almost got your set in your ways people who maybe take the trainee salary for 150K for, working 18-hour days and completely losing their minds by the time that they qualify. So, that's a long-winded answer, but the short of it is, I just think that the people at the top don't care.
Yeah, and look, I think it's good that we have opinions and people that have strong beliefs about that, because it's very easy to say firms should put people before profits, which I'm a massive advocate for, because I think a happier workforce that trickles down to a far greater bottom line. But ultimately, if law firms continue to be at the mercy of their clients and putting their clients ahead of their people, then the culture, unfortunately, will never change, because if the clients are demanding or there's no vetting of said clients and they're happy to take on those demanding clients, then unfortunately, like you said, that trickle down effect does take place. But, there are people pushing for change. And I know we've had, for example, Jessica Hanson, who's come onto the show, who does a great job with CEL solicitors and really does put her people first. And Jodie Hill at Thrive Law and all of these other sort of emerging, strong law firms that really are at the heart of sort of, inclusion, people. And I think we need more voices like that to really promote this, that, it's a change for good. It's not just a case of, it's soft because you're not doing those amounts of hours, or, we're not making X amount. I think ultimately you just need to look currently at the dropout rate of the mid-level associate market and why people aren't staying or being retained within the industry. It's because things currently aren't quite as sustainable as they could be. And with that leads nicely on to my next point, Troy, about balance. How do you balance this fitness training that you do alongside your commitments as a trainee? And do you think fitness training has taught you anything that you could apply to your legal practice?
Yeah, absolutely, Robin. And just before I answer that question, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to Jessica, because before I was trying to get my before I secured my training contract here, Jessica allowed me to have calls with her, and she gave me so much advice before. I'd never even met her, and now I've known her for a couple of years, and Jodie's been the same. Jodie offered me some work experience when I was in a real place of need. So just to kind of qualify my quote, we have some real game changers in here, and really fierce game changers, and we're in a good place. The point making is we're battling for something that I don't think should be a battle, because I think it should be a given. However, we've got the people that are definitely up for the fight, and people that I would 100% follow and, be led by, because the people that you've mentioned, amongst others, I'd also like to give a shout out to my MD, Alison Lee, who is amongst those game changers as well. She's a woman in law for over 30 years, leads her own firm, built this company up. She's a fantastic role model, not just for women, but for everyone in the firm. So I just wanted to sorry to go off on a tangent, but I think it's important to kind of give those a shout out.
No, I think it's really important to recognize people that are doing great things within the industry, and it's great that people that have been on the show are sort of widely well received within the legal community. So I appreciate you shouting that out. So did you want to share anything in terms of that sort of balancing with fitness training alongside obviously a trainee, and is there anything within the fitness training that's helped you apply to your legal practice?
Yes. So one of my many inspirations of lifting is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And, something that Big Arnold said was there are 24 hours in the day. You've got to make time for it. If you want to do it, you make time for it. It's as simple as that. So lifting to me is non-negotiable. I will lift every day, or I will at least go to the gym every day. But it's about time management and prioritizing what you're trying to do. So, I think, how do I balance that? Well, I'm very lucky that I'm in a place which allows me to, for example, I'm very flexible in when I can work. So therefore, if I'm coming up to a competition, my hours may change in terms of I'm allowed to leave a little earlier, maybe start a little earlier, so I can go and train at a suitable time and get the rest that I need. I think in terms of transferable skills, I've had some really kind of great chats about this in the past with other people. And I believe that lifting and law are very much the same. They're a competitive, brutal, ruthless environment, but they're also very giving, and you get out of it what you put in. And it says what it is on the tin. If you go into lifting and you can't lift it, there's no excuse, no other reason. You're just not strong enough. So you need to go back to the drawing board, find out why, be accountable, and then you can go back with another plan. And I think law is the same. I think notwithstanding those kind of mental mindset points, it also gives you discipline. It allows you motivation, confidence, all these kind of buzzwords that are really relevant to both lifting and law.
Yeah, no, really, really well said. And I love how you're able to, combine a passion with your career and use the best of those to really push yourself forward. So thanks for sharing that. And let's move to sort of volunteering, because as a first volunteer, I believe for Scam Champion, which is for the Hampshire, I believe, County Council, you've advised the community on how best to safeguard against scams and fraud, which, let's be honest, are everywhere right now, particularly with the emergence of Web3 and NFTs and everything else that's going on. So as technology progresses, what is the importance of protecting yourself in the digital world?
Well, I think, it speaks for itself, really. If you put yourself online nowadays, you really put yourself at risk in your entirety. And my focus is not really on, able-bodied professionals who, are able to access things in which they can protect themselves with. My focus is on helping community, primarily elderly members of the community. That being said, anyone can be scammed, unfortunately. But elderly members of the community in which they don't have access to the readiness of materials that we do, in terms of how we can protect ourselves because now we know X, Y, and Z at the click of a button. So I think volunteering in that respect is fundamental. Having someone like yourself, or like maybe someone like me going in and just speaking about what's going on in the world right now. And it's bringing that awareness, isn't it? It's bringing that awareness so that people can perceive that in whichever way they wish, but also to say, well, here's the awareness, but also here's the safeguard. So if you need that support, we can provide that to you. And in my Scam Champion days for Hampshire County Council, or whether it was at Citizens Advice, providing initial case handling advice there, whatever that volunteering is, it is all based on assisting people who maybe don't have normal access to that help.
Yeah, no, and I commend you for all the work that you have done there and continue to do, particularly from a volunteering and pro bono perspective. So I think it's so important not only to give back, but give back with a purpose where you can help people who really need it. And so you mentioned before you've had lots of work experiences, and you previously worked as a litigation paralegal for Blake Morgan LLP. What responsibilities were you given there, and was this similar to what you do now as a trainee?
I really enjoyed my time at Blake Morgan. I was a litigation paralegal there. I was in the landlord and tenancy department, and it was an experience, is what I'd say. There was three of us at the time. We were, very renowned. We were a tier 1 department, so obviously, by virtue of that, we had a lot of clients because our reputation preceded us. What I always say to people is almost similar to Gordon Ramsay when he used to describe his days in France. He got his proverbial handed to him daily. And I think that really shaped me as a young junior lawyer, because the caseload was immense. And you had to, as a tier 1, provide that elite service. Every single email that you sent, every phone call you took, every letter you sent, it had to be immaculate. And you had to do that hundreds of times over the day, whilst also looking at preparing bundles, also looking at going to court and what have you. So we worked primarily for the landlords, and we were essentially recovering possession of rent or properties and things like that. And it really gave me a good understanding of not just that particular part of the law, but also the necessity of keeping up with the changes in the law. And at the time, going through coronavirus, the Landlord and Tenants Act had been amended and changed to obviously afford the tenants more protection for loss of income, etc., and also protection in terms of having their homes repossessed through COVID through no fault of their own. So I really enjoyed the part of that experience in terms of trying to keep up with the law and all the changes and keeping it relevant, because it was quite simply at one time, the letter that we sent one day could have been completely different if we sent on another, because the law had almost been changed overnight. So that was something that I was really kind of keen to hone my skill in on that research. And how can I apply it to trainee life? Well, I think as a trainee, you have that pressure of, as I said, I'm lucky that I've got my own large caseload, but I also support other lawyers in the team, as is your duty as a trainee. It's to make your boss's life easier, essentially. And how, I can apply my time at Blake Morgan, because I truly believe that nothing can get as busy or as pressured as my time there in my training contract right now. I think as a solicitor, you're allowed the time to be more elegant in your delivery of your approach to each matter. I think in terms of maybe as a paralegal or wherever you're at in that kind of section of law, it's a bit more, it's a little bit more fast paced, and you're expected to be a lot more reactive. Whereas as a solicitor, there's obviously more focus on keeping it simple, keeping it calm, and just keeping it really, what are the client's needs? So there are a lot of kind of crossovers, but the main one for me is that it's enabled me to understand that I am good under pressure.
Yeah, well, good for you. And I'm glad you built up that strong work experience, because clearly it's helped you get to where you are today. And I believe you are also a Mackenzie friend, so a volunteer for NCDV. Can you explain briefly what was that involving?
Yep. So I volunteered for the National Centre of Domestic Violence, and that involved essentially case handling, unfortunately, some horrific cases that I was involved in, and it was, the Mackenzie friend comes as a later part of my role, and my first part of the role was to help victims of crime, sexual crime, and that kind of sexual violence, to formulate court documents in a coherent way, to draft documents in a way in which a judge would expect. And that was part of my initial role, was essentially to ensure that there was a clear and coherent case to go towards for the court. The second part, as a Mackenzie friend, was offering to almost, you're a litigant's friend. You go to court with the client, and you essentially, the main role is to put them at ease of the day. It's a very, very overwhelming and emotional experience, understandably, for them. And your role is to be that support for them, that support if they didn't understand maybe why a judge might have said something. You could obviously not while you're in the hearing, but afterwards you could clearly explain it to them. You could walk them through, and at the beginning of each day, each time I was a Mackenzie friend, you would just simply, as I said, everything's kept simple. Explain the process of the court. What will they expect from you? Just down to what do you address the judge as, and things like that. Because that's obviously, they might not think about that, again, understandably, but just to kind of just be that support in any which way you can.
Yeah. And again, I tip my hat to you for everything that you have done to really give back. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation today, Troy. And finally, before we wrap up, what quick tips would you give to aspiring lawyers wanting to secure any form of legal work experience?
Well, I've only got one piece of advice, and it's very, very simple. Be confident and get yourself out there. I think most employers are looking for someone who thinks outside the box, someone that shows initiative, someone that shows that they have the capacity to go outside the box to find a solution. So the best piece of advice I can give to you is, you are wanting to be a lawyer. Lawyers solve problems. You have a problem, find a solution.
I love that, Troy. Absolutely love that. So if people want to follow you or get in touch about anything we've discussed today, which I'm sure they will, what's the best way for them to contact you? Feel free to re-shout out your social media handles and website links, and we'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Troy Atkin. Feel free to connect with me, and I'm more than happy to accept messages from aspiring solicitors, students there. Also, I'm on Instagram at _weightlifting_lawyer. So feel free to drop me a follow. And if you do drop me a follow on either, just say hello, and hopefully we can connect and maybe build a business relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks ever so much, Troy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Really enjoyed today's discussion. So wishing you lots of continued success with your legal career and wider pursuits. And I look forward to seeing you as a national and international champion soon in the powerlifting scenes. But for all of us on the show for now, over and out. This week's review comes from Caris 1991. Great podcast for lawyers and law students. One of my favorite podcasts. Rob does a great job bringing on some of the most interesting people in the legal industry. Thank you so much, Caris, for your lovely, kind words. We really appreciate you and all your support from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast. Thanks a million.